Welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Conrad Weaver, and I'm so glad you've joined us today. Hey, if you're a first responder, or if you're someone who loves and supports first responders, you know that the job comes with crazy, unimaginable stress and trauma. But what if I told you that healing from that trauma is not only possible, it's happening right now through powerful new science and technology? Well, today's guest is Dr. Arash Javanbakht, a psychiatrist and trauma expert who is doing groundbreaking work using augmented reality to help first responders overcome PTSD and reclaim their lives. We talk about what trauma really is and how it affects the brain and body, and most importantly, how recovery is within reach. You're going to walk away from this episode with real hope and some tools that may just change your life or the life of someone you love. If this show has been helpful or meaningful to you, please hit that follow or subscribe button so you won't miss an episode. And if you know someone who needs to hear this conversation, share it with them. Let's dive into my conversation right now with Dr. Javanbakht. Well, Dr. Javanbakht, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. It's so exciting to have you on the program today.
Thank you for having me. It's a delight.
So just for let people know, we met a few months ago now up in Michigan. Tell us a little bit about who you are and the kind of the work that you do.
I'm a physician, I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm specialized in trauma, both in research and treatment. I work with survivors of torture, human trafficking, refugees, first responders, civilians, all sorts of people who have seen the worst of what humans do to each other and to themselves. And I look at what trauma does to the brain and the body over the long run and how we can advance our treatments to make it better. I'm also very much involved in talking to the public about issues like this, whether it's trauma, anxiety, stress in the mass public or specific group like first responders.
I'm just kind of curious, what got you interested in studying and working in the area of trauma?
I mean, it's a very good question. I think it all started with a mentor suggesting when I was younger to start reading about trauma and doing a literature review paper. And that was when I got a very much interest in trauma because number one, we don't know much about trauma and what it does to the brain and the body. We have researched a lot of other conditions, but trauma, PTSD, we're just starting to learn. Until not too long ago, trauma or PTSD was just an issue that we saw as a problem of veterans, combat veterans. Now we are learning about how big this is of a problem for the whole society and specific populations like first responders. But then there's also aspect of it that I like. One is that I can combine psychotherapy and medications all together. I don't have to just be a pill doctor or a therapist. We are learning about what it does to the brain. And it's very interesting compared to other mental illnesses that other mental illnesses just happen to come out of the blue, right? A lot of times there is some stressor, but there's a vulnerability in there. But with trauma, we have a fully functioning person without any problem. They happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and the whole life turns upside down. And I find it very fulfilling to help that person who looks shattered and bring them back on their feet and bring them back to their normal life. That part of my work has been very fulfilling.
Yeah, I'm sure it has to be to see someone in such a bad state of mental health and then seeing them come through that and thrive. That's got to be a fulfilling thing.
Very much so. Very much so.
So, over the past maybe 10, 15 years, the PTSD, thing has kind of taken off, and you hear people saying, "Oh, that gave me PTSD." And so what is trauma? What is PTSD, from your clinical standpoint?
And I'm glad you asked this question. Yesterday, I was talking to my resident trainees about this, that you open TikTok and different illnesses become fad at different times. And now, I had this difficult conversation with my boss. Now I have PTSD. And the other princess says, "Oh, no, you don't have PTSD. You have complex PTSD." And not that we deny the stressfulness of other life experiences, which could be very tough. But when we use term trauma in a very loose way, a lot of people who have gone through these experiences feel basically minimized, feel the problem is minimized. A lot of them don't even want to come forward with their issues because they're like, well, I will be seen the same way. But when we talk about trauma in psychiatry, we are talking about some horrible life experience which can be significantly, seriously threatening to someone's physical, sexual integrity. So we are talking about shooting, beating, domestic abuse, violence, rape, robbery, war traumas, whether it's in veterans or war to exposed civilians, serious motor vehicle accidents, serious life-threatening illnesses, natural disasters. And this is what we call trauma in psychiatry. Now, trauma exposure could be direct. I could be shot at myself, or it could be indirect, which is very common among first responders, meaning that, okay, there was a school shooting and now they go to the aftermath and they have to do the cleanup, or they go and see scenes of domestic violence, mutilated bodies. One of the biggest traumatic experiences for most first responders I've talked to is having to try to save the life of a child and then that not happening. So that indirect exposure is also trauma. As a result, then some people will develop what we call PTSD.
Recently, we were at an event in another state out west, and there was a county coroner at this event, and she started talking about some of the things that she's dealing with, and I thought, my goodness, I'm talking about seeing the worst of the worst, and then this person has to go take this body and do an autopsy, so it's just compounding that traumatic scene.
And it is specifically for first responders, one of the challenges. I was actually talking with another first responder yesterday, and one of the challenges we have is that in other cases of trauma, let's say I go out and I'm in a horrible motor vehicle accident, I go back to my safe life. Or in the case of veterans, they go to the war, they get their traumatic exposure, they come back to the safety of normal life. But for first responder, basically trauma exposure, especially if you're working in some urban areas, is a part of the career. So it happens over and over and over and over and over. Or if somebody lives in a smaller town, the same restaurant they have to go eat with their family might be a place they did a CPR and someone died. Or there was a shooting happening in some areas of the neighborhoods, and the life context and the trauma context becomes the same. And that is a big challenge for this field.
And that's why you often see when you're going out to dinner with the first responder, they're going to sit with the back to the wall, where they can see the front door.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of these work-related safety behaviors becomes normal. As you said, they go to a restaurant with the back to the wall next to the door, check out all the exits. We probably will talk about this technology we are using. It was so cool to see. One of our firefighters last week said, for the first time in my career, I went to a restaurant with my wife and sat with my back to the door as an achievement.
Wow.
Right?
I want to get into that technology because that's fascinating stuff. And we're going to tease that out a little bit. So when you're dealing with people with these kind of traumatic situations, how do you break that, that barrier, I guess, for people that they're just, covered with this trauma. They're just impacted by it. Their life is affected by it. How do you break through that to bring healing?
I mean, a big part of it is, first maybe a little bit about like what trauma does to the brain.
Sure.
So this whole system goes to fight and flight mode. Because a lot of times people don't know what's happening to them, right? Why is this happening to me? I mean, I was this person who was I was undercover detective sitting in the criminal's house on the same couch somebody was shot there, and now I can't even go to a grocery store. So basically for some people, and we never know why, some parts are biologic, some parts are genetic, some parts are childhood experiences, some parts are the unique aspects of the trauma or severity of traumatic experience. The brain goes to fight and flight and stays there. So now I have all the flashbacks and nightmares and avoidances and anything that resembles trauma or human related, I start avoiding it. I'm always on edge, constantly screening for threat. I might have a panic attack while any trigger of the trauma, something sounding like trauma, like 4th of July, fireworks go off. So now And it can become chronic. And I have had people, like, for decades, they have had nightmares and flashbacks every day and every night. Now, the first step is for the person to know this is abnormal. A lot of people think this is a normal part of me being a police officer. This is a normal part of me being a dispatcher. And the first step is to remind, okay, so this is number one, this is not normal. Number two, you don't have to live with it. Because then there's a stigma aspect that if I accept I have this problem, I'm dealing with the issue. Now this is my new identity for the rest of my life. And
do you think sometimes it gets attributed to, like, I'm messed up? There's something wrong with me.
I was sitting in front of a Detroit police officer last week. This man for 10 years had seen the worst things. Me just listening to them was making me nauseous. And he's looking at me saying that I am weak. And I put my laptop on the side and I stare in his eyes and I say, what I see is a man who put his life into the most dangerous life experiences and push himself to the point of breaking. What is weak about that? I see a hero, and I really meant it. I wasn't trying to be cheesy. So there is, because part of actually PTSD is those cognitions we develop, because we are a creature that wants to make meaning for our experiences, right? And a big part of when something very important, significant, painful happens is, what does it mean? Let's see, if I'm a religious person and I saw that 5-year-old sexually assaulted, what does this mean within the context of my religious understanding? So now there's guilt. Survivor's guilt is a big thing. 10 years later, they're still thinking about that child CPR that didn't succeed. There's shame about these experiences, and part is that feeling of weakness that I broke and someone else didn't break. And the problem is that these are so common. You know better than me. Like 20% of cops pass the diagnostic threshold for PTSD. A lot more have sub-threshold symptoms. But we all are sitting in this room. We are looking at no problem, but a lot of us are suffering. And when I look at my partner, I don't see it in them. And they don't see it in me, and we think, oh, what's wrong with me? I am the only weak person. No, it's like, and we are research. I do research. What are the things that make somebody develop PTSD symptoms when they are trauma exposed? And it depends on the trauma type. In survivors of torture, I've up to 80% of people develop PTSD because we are not built for these kind of experiences.
Sure. And how do different experiences or how does trauma affect differently for different people? I mean, something that affects you may not affect me. And why is that?
Yeah. And I've talked about different parts of this in my book. And part is the meaning again. I have a whole chapter about meaning. And this is how I process this experience. Did I process it as if I was there to help, and I've helped these number of people, and this one condition was out of my control and it couldn't succeed because of the certain circumstances of that problem? Or is it because it is me? Is it that the universe is punishing me? Is it that I'm worthless? Is that I'm wrong? Or is it that I have a mission? I am here. I've dedicated my life to serving other people. And then sometimes in these situations, horrible things happen which are not under my control. But the other part is there's a biology. Some people have different genetic backgrounds. We know from genetic research, some brains are more vulnerable to traumatic experiences. Then there's epigenetic, which means my genes change, their expression change. My parents had tough life experiences. They transferred those genetic changes to me. Childhood traumatic experiences, a lot of first responders have gone through childhood traumatic experiences. That we know makes us vulnerable for development of PTSD in the future. The sheer severity of the traumatic experiences, there are different trauma. We call them all trauma, but some are different. For example, we know from research, human perpetrated traumas are a lot more impactful in developing PTSD compared to, let's say, a natural disaster. We're talking about up to 70% of people who experience certain human perpetrated traumas developing PTSD. Then there is so even if 3 cops are on the same scene and 2 paramedics and 3 firefighters, it's like in the movies when you see 5 people arrive at an event and each of them see it from a different angle. They see it from different angles. I might be the one who had to put my hand on my partner's neck to stop the bleeding, and the other partner was arresting the criminal. I could be the person who lost a brother or a partner at the age, or like a family member or a child at the age of the kid that died on that scene, and the other person is single and doesn't have kids. I could be the person whose father was a first responder and told me this story, and now I have this experience. I could be the one who didn't see parts of it. So even when we think the experience was the same, the experience wasn't the same. And that could have a different impact. I had a firefighter who, for 2 decades, was on the force and had seen it all. What broke the camel's back was when he saw a 14-year-old overdose who was wearing shoes like his own teenager child. That's the meaning that our brains assigns to it, and how close it hits home, how relatable that experience is to us. So all these different variables together can determine who might be hit harder. And the other thing is that when we talk PTSD, I always say God didn't create a disease called PTSD, because from 0 to 100% of symptoms someone can develop when they are trauma exposed. We in psychiatry draw a line at 70% and say, okay, from here above, we call it PTSD. Doesn't mean that a 65, 60, 55 is not suffering. So a lot of people have even less severity of the symptoms. Some person could be, I have myself been in a very close to a gun going off, and the bullet hit on the floor, and then the shattered and hit the wall near me. So for the next couple of weeks, I had all these different weird emotional reactions, but I didn't have PTSD. And that is basically the brain trying to help. Because I would say when we talk about fear, we got to understand the context within which it's evolved. Basically, this system it's one of our most core functions, because 1,000 years ago, without fear, my existence was in danger. So when fear comes, when threat comes, that becomes the sheer priority, and nothing else matters at that moment. So the brain goes there and this with one mission. I don't want this to happen to you again. So you got to be on edge. You got to be on alert. You got to be angry. And a lot of times anger is the other side of the fear, right? And now you and I had that one experience. Now imagine right after that, you have to go to another call, to another call, to another call, to another call, and then tomorrow again, and tomorrow again, and tomorrow again. I cannot even imagine it.
You can't get away from it.
No. And it's just, each of them is different. Next one is an annoying call for someone who, I don't know, had some disagreement with someone else, but the next one could be someone who's shot dead.
Wow. So that just compounds. And that's, I guess, is that where complex PTSD comes into the picture?
So complex PTSD comes from longer exposures over longer periods of times, going back to childhood a lot of times, because now the system has inherently basically grown up in an environment that I have realized the world is a dangerous place. You can't trust people. You can't trust your own emotions. Emotional reactivity is unstable. And part of my identity has become trauma, whatever trauma has taught me or that environment has told me about me. Because a lot of what we learn about ourselves, or we believe about ourselves, I better say it that way, because it's a lot of times that's not correct, is based on that environment. I open my eyes and the only thing I don't see is myself. I see those other people reacting to each other and reacting to me and interacting with each other. And that creates an understanding of the world and myself for me, which may be correct, may be to some extent correct, which may be fully wrong. And then I grow within this context, and I also don't learn more adaptive ways of dealing with stress, right? I learned that, okay, if stress happens, one person's get beaten up and the other person has to attack. So now then trauma comes after this more and more. The whole system has more complexities in the way it reacts to life experiences than, let's say, if I had a fine experience until now and now I walk into traumatic experiences.
So how is fear and trauma, how are they related?
Very, very, very good question. And this is my work, right? I started with fear. My book is Afraid, right? So Fear is basically a mechanism that is in all biological beings, even a snail, that has one mission: keep us alive. And fear basically tells us, oh, there's a threat to you or yours. And fear has a target. Fear, let's say, okay, somebody's pointing a gun at me and I see danger. I mean, some fears are learned, some fears are already there. For example, a grizzly bear, angry grizzly bear in this room, we all will be equally scared. But nobody was born with the fear of guns, because back in time, there were no guns. So we learn these fears. A lot of these fears are learned in the right way and some in the wrong way, based on what the tribe leaders or tribe members told us, because that's another way we learn to be afraid of things, right? They would tell us, don't go to that part of the woods. There are predators there, and we would listen to them. Now we listen to them now, but it could or could not be correct what we are hearing, or they believe. But then trauma is that event that is seriously threatening to my existence, and I will have a fear reaction to it. And fear reaction is, what is fear? Fear, again, we got to see fear not in the context that I have to decide if I should pull my gun or not. No, we have to see it in an environment. Because let's say I had fear of public speaking, and now I'm on your podcast and my heart is pounding, my attention is distracted, my hands sweaty, mom's spaghetti on my sweater. Why? It is not helping me. But the idea is that back in time, if I was talking to my tribe and they didn't like me, in a matter of minutes, I should be ready for a fist fight or an escape. That's why the whole system riles me up for physical action. So I fight or flee. And that is the fear response. And sometimes, of course, there's the freeze response. That's like we basically feel paralyzed in situations that there's no way out of it. So fear, intense fear, is a response to that trauma. And sometimes that fear can stay there and not go away. And that becomes PTSD.
So as a kid, many people, myself included, we were afraid of the dark, scary basement or the boogeyman under the bed. Where does those kind of fears come from?
Excellent question. So we learn fear, and this has been a fascination of myself. So there are some fears that are inherent. A lot of people are afraid of spiders and snakes. Maybe we got it from the monkeys. We don't know. And then there are fears that I learn. And how do I learn to be afraid of things? This is a very important mechanism in us, right? Back in time, if a big brown fluffy animal attacked me, it would be stupid for me for the next time to go try to pet it. And it would probably be safe to also avoid big black fluffy animals, right? Brown and black bears. So a lot we learn by experiences. How do we experience them now? I don't know. I have had patients who were afraid of spiders because when they were a child, they saw the movie Tarantula, or they saw the movie Jaws, and now they cannot even go surfing because part of that brain, the animal brain, associated ocean with danger. Now, it could have been stories we hear from others because, as I said, we learn from other humans what to be afraid of, which is an adaptive mechanism. It would be stupid for all tribe members to go try to pet the fluffy animal and die, and then next one and next one. No, we saw this happen to someone else, I will avoid. Now, I could have seen it or I could have heard it. We treat, actually, my dog is here also, we treat people with fear of dogs with our technology. And I've had people who, when they were a child, their mom told them, don't go out. Dogs bit the neighbor's kid's ear. And maybe it was true, maybe it was a lie, but that created the fear. And a lot of times we don't know. I mean, and part is the cool part. You talked about folk fear, right? The cultural group aspect of fear. And we create fears for ourselves. And sometimes it has a function. And the next question is, why do we love to be scared? I mean, people come pay me to reduce their anxiety, but they also go pay a haunted house with John Carpenter to scare them, right?
Or they go to some horror movie and see terrible things on the screen.
Yeah.
So speaking of screens, if something can cause us fear by watching a movie or seeing something like on television that is causes us to be afraid, you're utilizing technology in a way to reverse that, right? Hey, for the past several months, I've been enjoying using the Train Well program for my daily workouts. I used to be really inconsistent with working out, and often I didn't know what to do next to achieve the results I wanted. I felt stuck. TrainWell has solved that problem for me. So if you would like your own personal trainer to guide you, it's actually really easy. Visit go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness. That's go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness and start your journey to a better you. If I can do it, I know you can too. Hey, the link is below in the show notes.
Yes. So now the thing is, the fears that are created that way by experience is basically a Pavlovian conditioning, right? Fear learning, associative learning. I touch something, it's super hot, my hand burns, I will not touch it again because it would be dumb to do it again. So that's my brain associates that to danger. So there's no logic in here. So that part of me cannot be talked to. I have a logical brain function. I have the illogical associative brain function. So now with a lot of people with PTSD, and more so first responders, humans become associated with danger. So now I cannot go to the grocery store. I had a undercover detective, now medically retired, who was telling me that my fridge is empty, not because I'm broke, but because I cannot go to grocery store. Because when I am there constantly, my brain is screening for danger. So now, how should we treat this? The best way is to go to a grocery store and practice that shopping. But the problem is, groceries, I cannot go with them. And even if we go, it's unpredictable. Random people come in. Someone who was associated with danger comes in. It's hard. So that's why historically our treatments, both medications and therapies, have been mostly focusing on symptoms. Let's reduce the flashbacks and nightmares. But then people remain disabled for a long time. Even I've had people who have been in therapy for years, they still can't go to their kids' games. So now what we do is that, and I can share videos with you, but we basically have these Iron Man goggles. People might have heard of Apple Vision Pro headsets, which just were released. It is not virtual reality, it's augmented reality, which means when I wear them, it's like I'm wearing glasses. I see reality and I see the unreal combined together. It's like a holodeck. And now we basically wear the goggles, and then myself and my patient are walking in a grocery store, and there are only two women in that corner talking to each other. And then as we progress through this and become more comfortable, more people come and crowd this room, and we see strong emotional reactions. We see that the body reacts to these digital humans as if they are real. We even, not only people tell me, oh, I'm 8 out of 10 scared in this context, but also when I look at the autonomic responses, like lie detectors detect, they're 10 times stronger. The sympathetic nervous system is on fire. Now we have a house party, we have a police station, fire station, because I have people who are, even they cannot go for their police medical assessments because the brain has associated that context to danger. Now they come and do these practices, or they talk to a digital human, AI motivated, fully automated human who can role play, be a partner, be a colleague, be that person whose mom died in the CPR and yelling at you, somebody who's you need to practice de-escalation, and fully automated. And we see amazing results. Like I told you, the first responder, the firefighter, after 3 sessions, he came and said, for the first time in my life, I went to a restaurant with my back to the door. I had this undercover detective who was basically medically retired, and he couldn't go to the grocery store. He just had his woodwork shop and a house in the same building. Now he went to Detroit Eastern Market with thousands of people there. It is working so well because the brain has that opportunity. And we are using AI to basically say, okay, what is your specific exact fear? And we recreate that for you, and we walk together and walk through this fear and overcome it.
Do you think part of that healing is knowing that that someone is with you walking through that experience?
Very much so, because we are social animals and we get social safety cues from others, specifically that primitive part of me which is involved in this, right? That undercover detective, we even joke about it, knows that if we are in a grocery store and something dangerous happens, his chance of survival is 10 times mine, and he's the one who's scared and I'm not scared, right? That's the animal brain. And that animal brain looks at this other human animal next to them and they're like, well, this guy is feeling safe. I should be safe also. So we relay that safety signals to the other person. And of course, then I use my skills of reminding, okay, this is how it is working in your body. This is how you go through this process. This is your sense of control walking through this is what reminds your body and your brain again that, oh, I did it and nothing bad happened. So my associated learning that this environment means danger might not be very correct. And that sense of control is a very, very, very important part of it. And I think the other thing is they know this is not real. So they come, but the animal body doesn't know. And that dissociation, the cognition and emotion dissociation is a big part of the treatment effect.
So you've been able to create these environments and create these scenarios using AI to kind of engage, and so the person will engage these people actually on the screen of what they see.
Yes. I can basically, you wear the goggles and you're standing in this room. I wear these goggles. I see the real walls of this room. I see my dog here, the real dog. I can walk on my own feet. And then a digital human comes through the door. And then grocery shelves, like in the movie Matrix, grocery shelves show up here. The difference with the Matrix is that I am still in reality and I see them real. And then more and more and more people come. I can walk around. I can interact with them. They look at me. They react to me. So and we can create anything that people avoid. It's a sports event, it's a restaurant. Sometimes I even have the video. I'm sitting with that same detective at a bar in this restaurant with people behind us chatting about the experience. And then at some point I leave the room. It's like, okay, you're on your own. Do your grocery shopping in this room because you want that sense of autonomy. Because we talked about my presence is important, but I will not be there with them for the rest of their life. So now they want to say, okay, I can do it myself. I don't even need this guy.
How quickly have you seen that fight or flight response kind of dissipate when they're in that environment?
So this is very novel technology. We are the only ones in the world with this technology. We have created this. So I say this to say it's very new and we are still learning. And we see that these people in 2 or 3 sessions start going out to the real world. And the guy I mentioned, the detective, he's now, I could almost consider him cured in after 8 to 10 sessions. The firefighters we have been treating recently, 2-3 sessions, they are back and about in the world, because a big part of it is that sense of confidence. Oh, I can do this. It looked so scary, but I did it. So, and then we baptize them in fire. If you can be in this tight room, which looks like a grocery store with 15 people of diverse age and sex and race and body type and height and behavior, then 3 people at the grocery store should be okay. And we did this. We started this with phobias, with fear of spiders, fears of dogs. People with terrible fears of spiders were able to go touch a real tarantula in 1 hour, 1 session treatment.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's very cool. I'm very hopeful because the disability aspect of PTSD is something we haven't been addressing. And especially for a lot of people, now we are not even talking stigma, right? We're not even talking about a disease. We're talking, well, you want to be able to go to your kid's game? Let's practice it here. And then we see PTSD symptoms automatically drop by themselves.
Wow. I wondered, long term, how that will affect them. Will those symptoms come back, without more exposure to your technology?
Very good question. So we tell people, now that you have learned this is how it works, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep going to that grocery store so many times until it gets boring and it's not scary anymore. Like my patients, we have contracts. Now you have to go to 3 public places every week, stay there for 40 minutes. And then they know now that, okay, you got to keep weeding your garden for the weeds not to come back. And then push it for him, push it more. Like this guy went to Detroit Eastern Market with a few thousand people there. He didn't take his gun with himself, which is huge for people with PTSD. So, but keep pushing it, keep doing it, don't stop. And then it becomes a skill. It becomes that, okay, now it's normal. Because I am of the belief that PTSD can be cured. This is very important. I think that we need this message, and it is not much out there. I had we had some producers were working on a trauma documentary about the refugees, and they came here and they said, let's talk trauma and let's bring all sorts of trauma exposed people. And we brought one of our cops and SWAT team member who had PTSD, and he said the first time I saw this doctor, and I didn't even remember this conversation, but I said at the end of that, I had in the past been told that, okay, this is PTSD, this is the rest of your life, you got to live with it. When I finished with this doctor, he smiled and said, we'll fix it. And at that moment, quote, I felt my feet, I stood on them, and I fixed it, end quote. This is something that can be fixed. Sometimes there may be residual symptoms, sometimes it's cure. And we can do that. And people can go back to their normal life. Life is too short.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to be able to enjoy it yourself and your family. Yeah. And that has been, if I have one message, the most important message I can have is people don't have to live with this.
Mm-hmm. And that's great news for so many first responders, right?
Absolutely. Because for some, as we talked earlier, they start to believe this is the norm of being a firefighter or a cop or a dispatcher.
I know I've heard first responders that have been through therapy and treatment, and they say, well, I've just learned to deal with it.
Yes. A lot of times it can be eradicated. A lot of times it can be minimized to 10, 20%. Sometimes it cannot be fully cleared up, but still, even 30% improvement over a long run is huge. And the other thing is that sometimes you got to try different things. Like we tried, okay, this medication, we had side effects. Well, let's try the other medication. Because at the end of the day, especially when we talk about medications, I start with saying, these are not addictive. They're not going to change the person you are. They're not going to change the way you think. And you're the one who chooses to put them in your mouth. Nobody's forcing you to take them. Now, you might have developed side effects to this. Unfortunately, the state of science is not where we can just do a genetic testing and say, okay, this is your pill. No, sometimes different medications work differently for people. So try a couple until we find the one that doesn't have side effects and is helping this person overcome that intense level of fear, so now they can go to their exposures, right? When we talk in therapy, we talk about, because sometimes there's a therapy which is what I call, hey, what's up therapy? How was your week? And then that's it. But there's a therapy that we look at, okay, you feel guilty because your partner died. Let's process this thought and see how real this guilt is, how true this logic is. Let's dismantle it and see if we can revise this cognitive meaning you have created for your experience. Or like what we are doing here. You can't go out there. Let's go out there together and overcome that fear. A big part of it is the work of the person. And there are a lot of other things also. Like when I work with people, I work with on what's your social life? How can we improve your family life? Exercise. If I have one message, and I know for a lot of people, exercise is the last thing on the list, right? Oh, I'm busy with this, that. And I remind them that. We know from research that regular, especially cardio exercise, because I know first responders are into weightlifting, but cardio is important also, increases the size of hippocampus, which is the emotional regulatory part of the brain, reduces inflammation in the body, creates new brain cells. It's kind of exposure therapy to physical symptoms of fear and anxiety. And it goes a long way. I have everybody who works with me commit to exercise. Now they're like, I'm busy, this, that. And my answer to that is everything in life. You may leave it or it may leave you. Your partner, your house, your car, your job, all of that may leave. The only thing that is with you until the last moment is your body. Now, where do you want to put your priorities?
Boy, that's such an important message, and that's something that I've been working on myself to keep to do that cardio work. I mean, I walked this morning. I went out and walked 2 miles, and I love that because it makes me feel better. Even when I get up in the morning and I feel like crap, when I get out and I walk, it does something for me, and it's an amazing experience.
And actually, when you feel like crap is the time that you definitely should do it. And the cool thing about first responders is that these are people of discipline.
Yeah.
So I use that discipline. Say, okay, I don't have to do the thing that I do for motivation with other people. These guys have it like in them. So we say, okay, you want to get rid of this? You don't want to be a slave to fear? These are the things you got to do, and this is part of it. And specifically what really you can enjoy. Like, I hate treadmills. I cannot be on a treadmill. That is me. But drop me in my boxing gym, I'll be there for 2 hours. I love it. Finding something I can love, and even if I want to do it 10 minutes a day. Because then gradually my body and brain starts to see the effects. And that is, again, going back to biology. Why do we do that? Because this body was not set for this behavior that we have now sitting in these chairs back in time. I mean, there's this documentary. If anybody wants to know how was the life of an original human, watch Alone. Alone is basically they pick these modern humans and they put them in those in like some northern islands in Alaska or Canada and say, okay, survive on yourself for 2 months. Now that's the real environment we are supposed to be living in, which requires activity, which requires walking, which requires even not eating for days. I mean, that changed my own mind about eating. Oh, I can't eat only once a day. And that's actually will be a privilege in that context of original. So we do these things to the body because this is what it should do. And if I don't do the same way, if I put my dog in the crate and lock the door and just put a ton of food there, that dog will not be happy with no pills.
Wow. Well, this has been just a really fascinating conversation, and really intrigued in your technology. And so who do you treat, and how can someone, come experience what you guys do there with that technology?
So we are in Detroit, and we treat first responders from across the state of Michigan. We have this program, Frontline Strong Together. Actually, I have the mug here.
Oh, cool. Yep.
And fsc5.org is our website. There's more information there. Basically, statewide program serving first responders' mental health needs, from peer support to treatment. And they are our kind of VIPs here. So we bring them here, and anytime we see, okay, with the technology, whether it's medication, psychotherapies, EMDR, this, that, but when it comes to medication, to this augmented reality therapy, when we see there is real world avoidance, as we say, okay, let's go do it. I have spent about a decade of my life developing this technology from fear of spiders to where it is now. I want it to be used. And we are, even if anybody's listening to this and they are like, oh, we want to bring this to our state, bring it to our city, town, we'll be more than happy to collaborate, because I want this to be used.
So tell us about how we can get in touch with you, and tell us about your book.
So in touch with me, just look up my name, Arash Javanbakht, and there's we can find my email. On Instagram, sometimes I post some basically educational stuff about mental health. And the book, Afraid, is basically what I know. The title is Afraid: Understanding the Purpose of Fear and Harnessing the Power of Anxiety. Basically, it's an encyclopedia of fear and trauma and anxiety, from the brain to the body to why we love to be scared. We talked about it. What is the original core of this mechanism, and why it is confused in the modern life? What is bravery? What is the biology of bravery? How do we define it? What are the diseases? And I talk a lot about first responders because I want the public to know about these issues that they don't. I mean, I didn't know this much. I didn't imagine how much trauma is in the life of a first responder before I started this work. I talk about fear and creativity, media, politics, basically all different aspects of modern life with fear and trauma. And a big focus I have there is to see fear, because unfortunately, modern medicine, we start to see fear as, oh, it's an infected appendix, you have to cut it and throw it away. But I see it as your dearest, closest friend who's worried about you. And how can we work together with this friend and readjust its assessment of how dangerous the world is, and even use it as an ally, because fear has energy, and that energy can be utilized. And that can take us places. Wow.
That is, we'll leave it there, because that's a powerful statement. And I want to say, Arash, thank you for being on the program. I'm so glad we met a few months ago, and really appreciate your work, the work that you're doing with first responders. It's important, and thank you for sharing what you guys are doing there.
Thank you so much. And I want to say I'm very thankful to what you are doing in basically spreading the message of hope and disseminating. I've watched a beautiful documentary, and I know you have a true passion and genuine care about first responders, and that's delightful to see. And you have a very important mission. I wish you the best of luck for the rest of this process.
Thank you so much. Hey, a huge thank you to Dr. Arash Javanbakht for sharing not just the science, but the heart behind his work. What he's doing with augmented reality and trauma therapy is truly inspiring, and I hope it gives you hope as well. Remember, PTSD is not the end of the road. Recovery is possible, healing is possible, and you're not alone. If you found this conversation helpful, please subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It helps others find the show, and it fuels the mission we have to bring wellness to the front lines of public safety. And hey, share this episode with a fellow responder, a department leader, or even a loved one. You never know who might need it. And finally, please remember that you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.